Neil here from Puzzling Parts, and I realise it's been a while since I've done a video, so I'm going to try and rectify that, and I've got a series of 4 that I'll be doing in the coming weeks. So as you can see, we're out in my garage now. I have my shop set up so I can actually work out here rather than being in the house and disturbing everybody. So yeah, welcome to my new workspace. Hopefully you had a look at the shop tour, which I posted a while back, but this is it. It's now a workable space for me. So what I've got in front of me is 4 of the Karakuri Work Kits that they call them, which is effectively a set of DIY puzzle boxes that they do. Most of the regulars will know that I'm a member of the Karakuri group, and when I renewed my membership at the start of this year, I decided to grab a couple of work kits. They come in around about $25 each, so they're really good value, and I thought it'd be a fun little project. So the 4 kits I've got here, I've got the Acorn box, the Spin box, the Newton box, and the Kakukaku box. Now I've probably got that horribly wrong, so I apologise. However, not to worry. So as you can see, they all come packaged in cellophane. They're kits of pre-cut plywood, and they all come with a set of instructions. Now, when I went to order them, they did actually say you do realise the instructions are all in Japanese. So what you get is effectively 2 sides of A4 paper with a bunch of diagrams and a lot of writing in Japanese. Now I do read some Japanese, but not enough to go through this. However, they're pretty straightforward. I've had a couple of requests from people to show how you put these together, so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to start off with the Kakukaku box, which I think is effectively based on the box with a tree, if you're familiar with that Karakuri box. So I'm going to go ahead, get all the pieces out, I'll zoom the camera in so that you can see what I'm doing, and we'll get started. Okay, so now that we've adjusted the camera so you can actually see what I'm doing, just to let you know what I've got here, obviously I've got my instructions. They're going to be reasonably useful, we'll see how we go. I have my gluing block here, which is effectively a granite slab. This is about 12 inches by 2 inches thick by about 8 inches deep. Normally sold as sharpening stones, effectively. You put wet dry sandpaper on this and then you can sharpen your chisels or anything else like that. I use it as a gluing block. It's a perfectly flat surface, which means that I can get blocks glued together perfectly. So if I sort of grab, I've got a number of blocks here that I had to cut for a puzzle, so I can glue these guys together this way, rock them over, and I know that I've got a perfectly flat surface on both sides. So anyway, the other things that I've got my square, which will be kind of handy. Wood glue, you could use either Elmer's glue or any yellow wood glue that you happen to have, should be just fine. And then we've got the kit itself, so I'll shift this out of the way and we can have a look at that. So the kit comes as a number of pieces. There's a number of sides. Effectively we have an inner box and an outer box, so you'll see we have larger pieces at the front here and top piece. Then we have a set of smaller pieces and an inner base. We have a section that goes into the top for the locking mechanism, and we have a tiny little tree. So that gives us everything that we get in the kit. I always tend to have a cloth line for wiping up glue or anything like that, and I tend to have an X-Acto knife again for just taking glue, any squeeze out. So that's pretty much my tools. That's about all I'm going to need. The only other thing I have is blue tape. This is Scotch blue tape, painter's tape. It's fantastic for gluing corners of boxes together, and in fact in the instructions here they actually suggest that you do that. Now, although I've got my set square, what we'll find is if I quickly look at a couple of these pieces, you'll see we have a very big cutout on here. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. So when we put these 2 pieces together, you'll see that we have a very big overlap on the pieces. So in fact you're going to get a square corner, putting these together, a piece of blue tape, and you will have a square corner. I'll check them as I go, but having done a dry fit of this box actually before even looking at the video, it's not a problem, it's pretty easy to do. So, what I will do is I'll stick up when I do the blog for this. I'll scan in the instructions and effectively convert that into something in English for you. But you can treat this video as a walkthrough as to how to build a box. So I'm going to start off by laying out the pieces as they have them here. On the top of our diagram we have a piece list. So I'm just going to lay them out the same way. They've got them all labelled. So that should make our life a bit easier. And the other thing I'm going to do is actually arrange them the same way as they have them in the photograph, because again that's just going to make our life a bit easier as we go. So we'll do that. Fortunately it's not particularly difficult. These are fairly well laid out. It's not a challenge to work out what the pieces are. So even although there isn't a set of English instructions for building it, I really don't think this is a difficult box to build. So there we go. So there we are. That's all our pieces. So first up, we're going to create the locking mechanism for the top of the box. So we're going to take this, which is labelled A in the instructions. This is actually going to be the very top of the box. So we'll take that, and this little piece here, which you can see has a lip on two sides, is going to get glued in. Now it's important that you glue this in the correct way, so following the diagram it's going to get glued in like that. Now what I'm going to do quickly is just grab a little bit of sandpaper and just tidy up the inside of this. It's a little bit rough in there, and when you're gluing you'll find if you have a smooth surface you'll get a much better glue joint than if you have a rough surface. So it doesn't do any harm just to clean things up. Doesn't take much, just enough to clean that surface up. You'll find because these are all probably a birch finished plywood, that the surfaces are all pretty good anyway, so you're not going to have to do a lot of work. So with that oriented correctly, we're going to glue that one in piece. It's not going to take a lot of glue, so you'll see as I glue this up how much I'm using. As I say, it's not going to be a lot. So we'll put a dollop in there, and if you've watched me when I made up the other puzzle boxes I did a while back, I just use my finger to spread this around. So you've got a good enough amount on there. The one thing with the wood glue is within 2-3 minutes you'll not be able to separate these without breaking the glue. So there you go, that's give you an idea as to what I've done. Again, I'm just going to double check with my diagram that I'm putting this on the right way, because once it's on it's not coming back off. And there we go, drop that into place. Now the nice thing about this is, hopefully you can see, I'll take pictures of this as I go, you get a very good fit in this because the piece is actually designed so that it fits. It's bordered on either side, so that fits quite nicely. There we go, we'll put that to the side. Now the next thing they actually tell you to do is to flip this piece over and put the tree on. I'm not going to do that just now, I'm actually going to put the tree on last. But what I will do, you'll see if you look at this, and again I'll take photographs of this, because this is laser cut you have burn marks on it, so just a little bit of sandpaper, and I like sanding. There we go. I like sanding on either side. As you can see, it doesn't take much at all, and that just cleans that all up, so you get a nice clean surface. And I'll put that to the side for the minute. Okay, so coming back to the instructions, what they do is the instructions are kind of interesting. If I have a look at this, you start over here and you wind your way round and back down. So the next thing they suggest is building the inner box. So pretty simple, we've got our pieces for the inner box, and as I kind of mentioned already, we've got these nice big cutouts, so when these go together you're going to find that you get a pretty good square edge on there. So we'll put this together. Effectively 4 pieces just get glued together and the base goes in as well. And all we're going to do is effectively a little bit of blue tape to hold the corners together and we should be good. The one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to glue this bottom plate in. I'm going to leave it free. Now what that means is there'll be a little bit of space for movement if the box swells. It's plywood so it shouldn't, but I'm going to do that. The other reason for doing it is if you're familiar with Karakuri boxes, you'll find that they're fairly well known for putting in some red herrings or trying to throw you off the scent. So having this panel able to move might give you some sort of idea that there's something there that actually isn't. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so all I'm going to do is run a bead of glue along either of the sides here, the same on this piece, glue it all together, bit of blue tape on it, and we should be good. Again, we're not going to need a lot of glue on this. Putting too much on and you'll find it squeezes out the sides and you've got a lot of cleanup to do, and we're trying to avoid that, so I'll do that. Now this time, because I'm actually in corners, I'm not going to use my fingers. I actually have a little glue brush here, so I'm just going to use that to spread the glue, and I may need a little bit more. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, I think I will actually. When you put the glue in, it does soak in a little bit as you go, so you may find you just need a little bit extra. So there we go. Now, what you could do is actually put your blue tape on before you put the glue on. I haven't done that, mainly because I know it's not going to be a problem. But if you think you're going to be pressed for time, then you can get your blue tape ready ahead of time. So, just going to take the excess glue off there, and then start. And unfortunately, I realised that my camera decided after 10 minutes it had enough recording, so we've missed a little bit here, but not to worry. So all I've done is glued up the edges of the box. I have some blue tape holding the corners together, and I did a quick check just to make sure that all my corners were square, which they are. As I said at the start, the fairly big cutout that we have makes sure that's going to happen pretty much without worry. The other thing we've done is we've got the top ready, so I glued this up about 10 minutes ago, and this isn't going to come apart now. The glue is set. It's going to take a couple of hours for it to be fully set, but even at this point, within a few minutes, it's not going to come apart. So what we've done is we've taken the top, we've got the top ready to be glued together, and all I've done is set the pieces up the same as they have in the diagram. So I've made sure that the top piece is sitting in the correct direction, and each of the pieces C1, C2, D1 and D2 are sitting in the correct locations. The only difference between the pieces is that you'll see on the top we have a cutout on this side and a cutout on this side. Effectively, the two pieces that go with that have an insert in them, so you'll see that in here. And all it means is when we put this together, that piece goes in and sits absolutely spot on where it needs to sit. Whereas on the back, there's no cutout, so this would effectively slide, but fortunately it's held in place absolutely perfectly because of that notch. So if I put that in, and then go ahead and we'll stick this one on just to show you. So you'll see we get a nice even corner here, and the whole thing is going to sit absolutely perfectly. So we'll go ahead and get that glued up. Again, just have a quick look as you're going. If you see any little rough edges, then either just run a little bit of sandpaper over them just to tidy them up, or if you've got little splinters, feel free to pull them off by hand. So again, we're going to glue this up. I've got my glue brush sitting, so we'll just glue that up. Again, because we're going into a corner, it's easier with the brush than it is with my fingers. And then some blue tape just to hold it together. What you didn't hear me say, because my camera stopped, was effectively blue tape works with having a slight amount of stretch to it, works like a clamp on the edges, so it'll keep the edges well and truly held together. So I say, we'll go ahead and get that glued up, and actually that's pretty much us ready, other than putting the tree on. Okay, so all I'm going to do before I glue this up is we're just going to put a little bit of blue tape onto each side, just so that when we glue it, the tape's already in place to hold everything together. So we'll put that on, and then we'll get it glued up. Okay, so the side's taped up, we're ready to go ahead and glue this up, if my glue bottle hasn't sealed itself up, which it has. There we go. This is what happens when you get distracted. So we're going to run the glue on all four sides. Then again we'll get the glue brush out and just make sure we get the glue along the base and up the sides. As I said earlier, we don't need a lot of glue. This stuff sticks pretty well within a couple of minutes, so once it's glued it's not going to come apart. I'm going to do the same on the base. I suppose I shouldn't really say base, it's more of a bottom than a base. And we've got the pieces laid out. There we go. And then we'll just go ahead and put all this together. So I'm going to start with the sides that have the notch in them first, because that keys us for either side. So, and again I'm going to use the gluing block just to make sure that I've got these square, with the top as it were. I'll stick the side on, slide that into place, and the back. So I'm just putting all these on together nice and quickly. Squeeze these together, and then this is where we want to use our blue tape. We just pull on that and say it works like a clamp, and we'll actually hold this nice and square for it to dry. Just hold that in, around there and around there. And that's going to have us pretty nice. I've got a little bit of extra glue in the top there, so I'll just pull that off with my finger. And there we go. And as you saw when I was putting this together, I'm just going to actually pull this round a little bit just to tighten it up. I've got a little bit of movement, so there we go. I actually built this upside down, so I know that what will be the top of the box is perfectly flush. And just using your fingers you can tell that. So that's that ready to go. So the only thing really left to do once this all dries is we'll put the tree on. And the one thing you do need to do, because I didn't put the tree on to start with, is to make sure that you put the tree on the right way. So coming back to our instructions, it shows you which way to put the tree on. So effectively, if I follow the instructions and you have a look at the inside of that, when we flip it over, we're going to want to have the tree on that way. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry up, then I'll get the tree put on, and we're pretty much done. Don't mind the dog, she's off talking to the neighbours. So we're getting ready to stick our tree on. What I'm going to do is actually mark the centre of this, just so that we get the tree on absolutely spot on. So just taking my square, I'm going to mark the corners and then do the same the other way, and that's going to give me a centre point. What it would do if my pen actually marked up. So So there we go, we've got a small centre mark which will be covered up quite nicely by the tree. Going back to my diagram, I'm just going to double check that we've got this the right way round. So, setting it that way, my tree wants to go this way. What I might actually do is just measure my centre. Just so that I get that. Nicely centred on the piece. Now, you don't need to worry about the pencil marks, nobody's ever going to see them once it's glued in place. So, I'm just going to put a tiny little spot of glue in the back of this. And as you saw me do with the other pieces, we'll just run over that with our finger. Now, you don't need to be over the entire piece because this glue is going to stick pretty well anyway, and we don't really want it to squeeze out on the top. So there we go. And I think that looks pretty good. Give that a few minutes let it dry and we're done. Okay, so the boxes have been left to sit for a little while and the glue is dried up nicely, so we'll go ahead and we'll take the tape off. And there we go, there's our inside box. And the outside box, again, not much different. Let me just take that off. There we go. And one thing I have noticed just on the corner is we've got a little bit, effectively, the wood which is splintering slightly. So what I'm just going to do is take a tiny little bit of glue on my brush and we'll just brush that in. And once that dries, you'll never know it was there. So, there we go. So the idea here isn't necessarily to put a lot of glue on. All I'm trying to do is put a little bit of glue in, so it's going to go underneath that piece and just hold it flat. So sometimes in woodworking you have to almost do damage before you can do a repair, but in this case shouldn't be too bad. So there we go, and that gets the glue in underneath the joint. And we'll just push that down. Now, I'm just going to hold that for a minute or two. That should pretty much hold in place. And there you go. Once that dries, all that's really left is to give it a light sanding and we're pretty much done. So there you go, that's the first of the boxes I've put together. All I've done to finish it at the moment is just give each of the sides a light sanding, just to tidy it up, and there we go. One thing I will say in terms of the difficulty of putting this together, it's a pretty simple puzzle to put together. I wouldn't say anybody would have problems in doing it. The mechanism on it is very simple. Once you've got everything sanded properly, it fits very nicely. The one thing I will say is it is actually quite easy to open. So as a puzzle box, not very difficult, but as a kit, it's quite nice. So that's the first of the reviews of the DIY kits from the Karakuri group. This is the Kakukaku box. Let's see, quite a nice little box. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.